It's no good going for an interview, for example, and putting on an act and getting the job, and then you've got the job for the person that you pretended to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important, to let people come to work, let them be themselves, give them as much help and support as you can.
Welcome to the Silent Epidemic by Omnia Health Group, the podcast where we uncover the unspoken truths of mental health. There's a mental health crisis sweeping the nation, and we're here to discuss the aspects that often go unnoticed. I'm Hatice Mehmet-Quirk, a therapist, and each month I'll be speaking with leaders from various industries and disciplines. We'll explore how they tackle mental health both personally and professionally, offering valuable insights and advice. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Mark Chapman. Mark is a highly experienced operations director, COO and CEO with a diverse background in FMCG, food retail, online fulfillment and more. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks, Hattie.
How are you doing?
Really good, thank you. Lovely to be here.
Very good. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
No problem. Sorry, I'm honoured actually. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So to start off, for us to get to know you a bit better and the audience at home, we usually start the podcast with some quick fire questions.
Good.
Are you ready?
I think I'll let you know.
What is your favourite movie of all time and why?
Well, to be honest, I'm not a great movie buff. I like to watch true stories usually. Anything truth, crime, I like all of that. But I do have a favourite film, which is a series of The Hangover. It made me laugh so much that I have to put that down as my favourite.
Very good. And it is one of them feel-good movies, isn't it? That it does make you...
Absolutely hysterical, I was, yeah.
And what's one hobby or interest you've always wanted to pursue but never had the time?
I'm not really sure. The hobby, I guess, or the interest that I would have loved to have really got into was continuing from my youth, where I was pretty fit and did lots of sports. So I started, like many people do, the gym, stopped it, started, stopped it, start. So I'd love to have gone on and stuck with that and pursued it for forever, really.
Right. So it's an interest of yours that you've picked up and dropped off, but you would rather have been consistent with it.
Yeah, I would have loved to have carried it right through. And I'm like a lot of people, you know, I go and I get right into it, and I'm going to do it, and you know, and when I do it, I do it. I do regret it because I'm in and out of, you know, and put on weight, lose weight, and so that's something I'd have loved to have carried on, I think.
If you could switch lives with anyone for a day, who would it be and what would you do?
Possibly, the Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister.
And for that one day, I tried to get really down and into how the country could support, help, work with the underdog. That's what I'd love to do.
And transform the country in a day.
Well, a day would be difficult, but if you could work with a team and just in that small amount of time change the focus to really helping and supporting the underdog is the way I'd call it.
And what's your go-to comfort food and why does it bring you comfort?
Fish and chips.
Fish and chips. Good choice.
Fish and chips on a Friday night. I don't know. You feel naughty when you're eating it. So I guess the comfort is I'm allowed to do it. I think it also goes back to, you know, when you're young and you're kind of, you know, in my day, of course, I'm much older than you, but we used to, in the summer, we'd go out in the morning and your mum wouldn't see you until the evening, which is much more difficult these days. But then as you got a bit older and you started to earn money, you didn't need anyone's permission. You could go and buy your fish and chips when you wanted it. So that's my kind of go-to comfort food, I think.
And how do you like to unwind at the end of a stressful day?
I'm massive into family. So spending time with my wife, Maria, my children, Lauren and Jason, and and their partners, Victoria and Charlie, and my grandchildren who I idolise, Evie Rose, Jackson and Elsie. Spending time with them, I just naturally unwind, because especially with the grandchildren, they just like, you know, come on granddad, get on with it, like whatever it is. So I love to spend time with my family.
Nice. That connection and that bond is your switch off from the rest of the world.
It is, yeah. I was always like that, actually, even through my kind of corporate career, working career. Many of my ex-colleagues, I'm sure, would tell you that there were lots of events that went on, and I would rather not go to the event and be with the family, and that certainly helps me to unwind.
Nice. So I'm going to move on now to some questions about your career and your mental health.
Yeah.
And the first question I have is, you've had a varied career in operations and leadership roles. Can you tell us how you got to this point and your own experiences with mental health on this journey?
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled into as many people do, into retail as a career. I used to enjoy school. In fact, I loved it. But what I loved more about school was the interaction with people and sport. Didn't necessarily love getting my head down to work on all the things that we should probably do at school. So at the end of school, I fell into retail, and the journey just takes you along, as it were. I think where I've always tried to focus throughout my career, even from a young age, was working with teams. And I think I developed quite a good leadership skill, which was to involve everybody. I was tested when I was about 18. I worked in retail, and I was made. It was actually for a company called Texas Home Care in them days. It was a retail business that's no longer here. But I was promoted at 18 to what was then called a warehouse manager, and one of my colleagues was a guy in his 60s. So you can imagine it was really difficult for someone relatively young. But that taught me a lot about respecting people in the workplace. This guy had unbelievable knowledge, and I put myself in his shoes at that time and thought, how does he feel about an 18-year-old coming in to be his boss, as it were? So I think from a young age, I learned that we've all got great, skills, different skills. And it doesn't matter what job you do, we just do different jobs. Everybody in the workplace is as important as one another. And it's something I took with me through a lot of my roles in different jobs. That bit about, look, no one's, get rid of hierarchy, no one's bigger than anyone else, we just do different jobs. So yeah, I think, so did that answer your question?
It did, yeah. But you just said that you were 18 years old. You've been given this promotion as warehouse manager. You're managing a team where you've got someone with quite a big age difference.
Yeah.
You learn that actually you had to manage that, to be respectful of the age difference, while still valuing each person's contribution to the team.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's a tool that you've taken through.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, how did you cope with the pressure of that at such a young age?
I think I thrived on it, actually. I think I thrived on that responsibility and pressure. And it was kind of one of those where people were going, let's see how he gets on. And I remember the guy's name. His name was Tony Camps. How's he going to get on managing Tony? And so I took it as a bit of a challenge, and I thrived in it. And I realised really quickly, I think, it's going to be difficult for him. Really understand it's going to be difficult. So to acknowledge all of the good things that he did, and the whole team actually, was going to benefit him, me, and the business. So I think the direct answer to that, I think I thrived on responsibility at quite a young age.
All right. So you saw the opportunity that was given to you. You almost took the whispers that were going on in the background of doubt as to whether or not you were going to be able to manage the position, manage that big age gap with a member of your team, and you thrived on that to push you to achieve
Yeah.
and make sure you did what
I
was
think
necessary.
that's a really good way of putting it. That I took it as a challenge, and so used it in a positive, and of course the first few weeks were a bit more difficult because Tony was this guy, who'd been around, seen a lot, done a lot. But after a little while, we had a fantastic team, and it wasn't through me, but it was through them accepting me and really driving the business forward rather than going head to head, as it were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that you've mentioned there is it seems like your mindset drove that. So rather than looking at the negative, you looked for the positive for the benefit of the business and the team to see how you could make it best work for all involved.
Yeah.
Taking on that acceptance that, yes, it could be a bit difficult with the age gap, with the experience of this particular employee, but you worked that to your advantage, it seems.
Yeah, I think I go back to when I was a child, and my mum, God bless her, used to tell us, look, when no one's better than anybody else, and so work with people, respect people, listen to people, and then add some value if you can. And I think I was lucky that I had that from my mum and took it into the workplace, and it just seemed to work for me. My career went quite quick, sometimes too quick, really, because you were moved in those days. You were moved really quickly. If you were doing quite well, you were moved really quickly. But and I really mean this. It wasn't. I don't think our success was me. I think it was the team that accepted that, because it was as difficult for them to have this young boss as it was for me to go in with an older team. So yeah, I think yeah.
But then it seems also that the values that your mum sort of set, provided your foundation of, okay, this is how I want to be within the workplace. It's not just the moral set that I'm going to have as a person. This is what I'm going to do within the workplace.
Yeah, I think so, because I don't differentiate work from home in terms of interaction with people. And I think that whether you're at home, on holiday, you've got a fantastic tan, by the way, well done.
Thank you.
On holiday, or you're in the workplace. I think that if you're taught that, we're kind of all equal, we just do different jobs and respect, then you can get self-fulfilled as well. You can gather that from an environment where you're looking out for people a bit.
And I think a lot of people forget that. This is a motto that I've always had when I've worked in places. People forget that we spend most of our time at work. So it's really important for us to be happy within that work environment, because it takes up so much of our time.
Absolutely agree with you, 100%. Especially when you're young as well, because when you're young, you can easily fall into that. I'm going to be there a lot because I want to impress. I want to get on, and I want. So I agree 100% what you just said, that we spend an awful lot of time at work. So if we kind of have a Mark or a Hattie at work and a Mark or a Hattie at home, of course there's bits of that. There's always going to be bits of that, and you're probably chilled out and more relaxed at home. But if your whole persona changes, then being at work in that scenario is more of an act, and then I think it would become exhausting. So I've always encouraged the teams that I've worked with to bring themselves to work, rather, and be themselves.
Yeah, so rather than putting on that act, be your authentic self, be the person you are outside of the workplace as well as inside the workplace, and you're more likely to bring out the best of yourself.
Yeah, because I'm sure I've met people that are going for an interview, and they'll say to me, what would I say about this? And I just say, look, listen, it's no good going for an interview, for example, and putting on an act and getting the job, and then you've got the job for the person that you pretended to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important, to let people come to work, let them be themselves, give them as much help and support as you can.
Because I suppose you can only wear that mask for so long, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you can.
So, in your opinion, what role does leadership play in maintaining good mental health for yourself and for your team, especially in a fast-paced business environment?
I think that as a leader in a large role with maybe a large amount of people in that team, I think the team have to understand that you want them to be themselves. You allow them to come to work and be very open. So if they've got things that are on their mind, things that are worrying them, they should be able to express that, and it shouldn't be a stigma for them. So we've all got it. We're all the same. I think we've all got different things going on in our lives we're at work, but we're all human beings. So one of the things that I found has been really valuable for me is in any job with the team is to create a simple vision, and then a bit of a plan beneath that to get the business to where you want to be. And I've always said that the most junior person in any team has to understand the vision and be fully involved in delivering it. So I think you have to, but I'm by no means perfect in any of this, but I think you have to allow people to be involved at whatever level they're in that team, to feel valued and to feel that they can openly talk about if they've got issues or mental health or other issues. And if they need help and support, then you have to give it.
So it's almost like your motto has been, you come up with the vision for the team, you share that vision. It doesn't matter where your job role fits within that team. Everyone needs to be as involved in achieving that vision as much as possible. And also you encourage your team members to come forward and share with you their personal issues or problems that they've got going on, because if you're aware of it, you can provide the support necessary, as opposed to them keeping quiet about it and it festering underneath and affecting their ability to work.
Yeah, I clearly, I've worked in 2 or 3 big organisations, and you can kind of only impact your part of that organisation. But I think it was 2022 that the World Health Organization said that business loses about 12 billion days a year with people that have got poor mental health, which is a cost globally of about $1 trillion, I think. I might be a little bit wrong on that. And so if you've got a team, I would imagine in many scenarios that people feel afraid to discuss that at work, and what the implication's going to be, and what are people going to think of me. But I think if you, at the risk of repeating that actually, but if you can make everybody in that team realise that they've got a value, and they're going to be heard, they're going to be listened to, and you genuinely do it. I used to say I say it in all the jobs actually, but part of some of my roles was visiting different sites. And so you'd go around, and I used to say to the senior teams that worked for me, who would also visit sites, that if you make the person that you're speaking to on that day feel that they're the most important person in the organisation, you're going to have a lot of wins from that. And if you value what they're saying to you, because you can get lost in having big teams and as I said, there's no way I got this right every day, but that's what we tried to do in most of those roles that I ran. Create the vision, make everybody feel involved, and let them know that if they've got issues and problems, that they could openly speak about them.
And it almost seems like your motto was very much that one-to-one time that you had with any employee that you came across. You made sure that the understanding, the value, and making them feel heard was an integral part of your interaction.
Yeah, do you know what, Hattie? In some situations, I was surprised often about why people had mental health issues. And I had to learn lots about it. In fact, in the role I'm in now, the last 2 years, I've learned more about it than I've ever known. And there's so much more to learn. But lots of people that work in a business, I found, it was really small things sometimes from a work perspective that caused them the angst and the anxiety, like getting paid on time, like having a locker. And these sound really small things, but when you add all of those things up, it caused people angst and issues. So if you can create a vision with your leaders who are managing all of the teams, and everyone knows you really mean this, everyone's got this value, you can make so many strides and help people that you don't even know you're helping, because they don't get to that point where all these small points are causing them anxiety and frustrations. I don't know if I explained that very well, but
it's almost like you're from what I took from that is it's the little things. It's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. It can be a build up, but it's the smallest thing that can make the biggest impact.
Yeah, exactly that. A number of small things in isolation don't really matter to people, but in isolation. But when there's a number of them, then it becomes a big problem to them. And if you're in an environment where they don't feel that they can speak about it, I think that's when you start to get problems and people start to suffer because they're afraid to talk about it.
Well, it's almost like a pressure cooker, isn't it? A little bit more pressure,
Exactly,
and then it's going to come out
exactly
sideways.
That, yeah.
How can businesses better support their employees' mental health?
I think it's a really big topic, and I think it's one that they're trying to get better over time. They're trying to get much better. But I think I said to you earlier that in this role that I do now, I've learnt more about mental health in the last couple of years than I ever did. But unless businesses learn about it themselves, they're going to find it really difficult to spot problems, be open about problems. So neurodiversity and different trigger points that I've learned to look out for, especially recently. Unless businesses make a huge effort to understand it, I think it's going to be a problem for a long, long time. However, I do think the corporate world is trying, but I don't think they're trying hard enough.
Yeah. So it's almost like there is an awareness around the importance of it.
Yeah.
But you feel that if people were to educate themselves, or the corporate world was to educate itself about the triggers, about the role that it plays to an employee themselves, they would be better placed to support those employees.
I think undoubtedly. And the other thing about it is that leaders of big organisations, big corporations, they'll have it themselves or within their families. So they'll have experienced some of this naturally through their lives. But to take it to the next level for the people that work in those organisations, I think your point about education is massive. They need to go out and spend a bit more money on really understanding what triggers mental health, in order for them to support their teams much better when they highlight the problems they've got as individuals.
And you said earlier about the cost from the figures the World Health Organization released. There is a massive cost to all businesses in regards to mental health and the impact that it has. You said they need to go out and spend the money to get the education, but in a way, if they were to spend that money to get the education, they'd be saving in the long run anyway.
100%, because when I think the figures I quoted you earlier were based on absenteeism. That's not taking into account presenteeism.
Yeah.
And so if you added all of that into the pot, the cost is enormous. So I'd love to see big corporations spend a bit more up front in trying to understand what's going on. And I think that over time, it would be a cost saving. Yeah. So they'd spend it up front, but they'd save money through people being at work more, and delivering better productivity. Because, none of us are stupid. We know that corporations need to make money, and I'm a massive believer in, if you put your people first, they look after your clients or your customers, and then the profits follow. I really believe in that. So yeah, I'd like to see that through more corporate businesses.
And you also said earlier that chances are, the people that are at the top of these corporations have been through it themselves or seen a family member go through it. Do you think that makes a difference to a company's initiative to go out and encourage the education around mental health?
I do, sadly, because I think that if they've seen it, touched it, seen the awful side of poor mental health, I think that they're more inclined then to say to the team, look, without divulging their own situations, but just naturally by being involved in it, you'd have to be a bit daft then not to think, well, all these people working in the organisation, we're going to have some people that need some serious help. So I do think that if somebody's been through it themselves or a family member or a loved one, that they're going to be more inclined to spend more money on it.
In the work that I do, I come across a lot of people that have suffered for a long time and haven't even really been aware of how much their mental health has impacted themselves, their work, their families.
Yeah.
So when you just said that, it made me thought, well, how about these, CEOs and people that are at the top that are actually suffering, that aren't even aware that they're suffering because it's just so normal to them. That's how they exist. That's how they live.
And sadly, I think that's true. I think that there's going to be many many senior executives in many companies that are going through some tough times, but don't really understand, what the trigger is, or and so I guess in your industry, it's a massive challenge in how do you get into those people and get them to open up and teach them. I know that your business is doing a fantastic job and offering a brilliant support for so many people, but yeah, it's a real thought about how it could be tackled at senior exec level, just to get people to understand that some of what they think is normal in their life perhaps isn't. I don't know the answer to it. I don't know the answer.
I think there's still a long way to go because, we're still coming across people that are still battling with the stigma that goes with, saying, I want to go to therapy or I'm having therapy. A lot of people are still scared to come forward and say that they would consider it, or they think it would be of value to them, or they've had it and it has been of value to them. So I think there is still a long way to go for it to just become a part of everyday life.
Do you know, when I knew I was coming on the podcast, I went to see a football game. It was actually an FA Cup final where Manchester United won, which was good. And I was with a group of friends, and I said to the guys, how many of you have had therapy in your life? Nobody. Not one person. So it's a massive challenge, and for you and your industry, it's ginormous, and I don't have the answer as to how you could break into that executive level of people to say, look, we need to flag this, and but I do think if there was a breakthrough, that people would then go, actually, I'm getting this a bit more now, and then I think the investment would be there. But I also think that if leaders of any business truly involve everybody in the workplace, as we said earlier, and allow them to come to work and be themselves, so bring themselves to work, that the openness to ask for help would be much higher.
Yeah. So having that policy where everyone's equal, open space as such to just be yourself, say how you feel, explain what's going on for you, would almost break down that barrier of the stigma related to, I need help.
Yeah. And I think that, we shouldn't lose sight that every business has targets, goals, sales targets, profit, to make. But once we can break that stigma, and once people can say how they're truly feeling, I honestly believe if they're then supported, that the productivity will go up. So it's not an either or. So it's not, you can tell us how you feel and you're not feeling great, so it's going to be a problem. It's, you can tell us how you feel and you're not feeling great, let's give you a bit of help and support with it, and then you come back into the workplace feeling so much better, and the productivity's there. So yeah, it is a conundrum. It is a conundrum, and I don't envy you in your world of, how do you make that breakthrough? Yeah.
Mark, in your experience, how has the approach to mental health evolved over the years in business?
Well, if I went back to when I started, it was never discussed. It was, there were reasons for loads of situations in the workplace, but mental health way back then was never even mentioned. So I think it has evolved. I think that it is mentioned now, and I do think the more and more it's spoken about and less it's stigmatized, that people in the work environment are understanding that it's a huge problem. So my explanation there is that it was never spoken about, and then over time it now is spoken about and it is realised to a greater extent. But I'd go back to our discussion previously that says, I almost feel like you can never know enough about it, and there's always going to be things that are surprising you around mental health. And I've had experience in the workplace before of, people that have appeared really happy at work, and then I remember, and then you might hear of a tragedy that's happened with that person. So I think the workplace has evolved. I think it was never spoken about. I think it's spoken about a lot more now, but I think it's time maybe for some big corporates to do even more, invest even more money in it, and allow their teams to understand that it really is, there's no stigma around it. So I hope that's answered.
Yeah, so evolved. From your experience years ago, it wasn't something that was spoken about, wasn't something that was even mentioned. You're noticing it come up more now, but you still feel like there's work to be done around the awareness, the education, and the stigmatization of coming forward. And when you said about the corporate sort of taking a stance to get that education and put the right support in place, it almost feels like they need to set the precedent to the world of, okay, this is what needs to be done, guys, and that will effectively make all the difference.
I think so. I think that what I was trying to say, so another example is, if you went back a number of years, it wasn't spoken about. There was never any support at all offered, nothing at all. It was, Hattie's having a bad day, or Nathan's having a bad day. I think that's moved to understanding that actually there's a repetition maybe, and we need to spot some of these triggers. And I do think some big organisations are trying, and they do offer people support and some therapy and things. But I'm not sure. I'm sure there are, but I'm not sure the depth that businesses are going into, or seeing the value of looking after their teams that have got mental health issues. Number one, and most importantly, so they can live a fulfilled, happy life. But B, because when they come back into the workplace, they're going to add more value. So I think that's a conundrum for all of it. But it has evolved, but there's a long, long way to go, in my opinion.
And I've come across a lot of people that have said that their workplace offers, mental health support. And one that particularly made me laugh was this workplace provided a snack box for well-being support. Now, I don't understand what support a snack is going to, we all enjoy a snack. It can give us a bit of
Bar
comfort.
chocolate, I suppose, yeah.
But what is that actually going to do to support somebody's mental health and well-being?
Yeah, nothing, in my opinion, nothing. I think it's more of a tick box.
Yeah.
So, we know that mental health is an issue. We've given people a snack box, and but I think it's earlier on in our conversation, it's what I said about if the guys and girls at the top of organisations don't really get it, then it's not going to filter through to the teams. And so and the other thing you can get in a corporate is, of course, even if the exec are saying, look, we really want to support people, we want to help people, we're going to offer therapy. What you'll often find is that in the middle is a line manager who perhaps, I'm not suggesting this is always, but perhaps thinks, oh God, if I let Mark have some time off, how am I going to fill the hours? How am I going to, how are we going to deliver the same results? But I meant what I said earlier, that if you can help in that scenario, Mark, to get better, your longer term results will be so much better. So, there may be that in the middle, there may be that barrier, because the in every organisation, people go to, I believe, to do a good job, and lots of people are held to task and results and all of that. So it is pressured, of course, for people, but that matching if we make people feel better in themselves, they're going to add more value to the business, is another big conundrum, I think.
So it's almost like at that fulfillment level, people need to be aware that, okay, you may lose someone for a period of time while they work on their mental health, or they may not be as available as they would be normally while they get the support that they need. However, in the long term, you'll get the dividends for it, because this person will come back to work stronger and more focused and effectively
in a much better place than themselves. But I meant that as well when I said that the number one thing should be about the person. So let's help the person get better. And the added benefit to that is when we've helped them and they get back to work, the benefit to the workplace will just naturally follow. So
And I think that really links into what we said earlier about people spend most of their time at work. And if they're really unhappy at work or within the workplace, then when they're going home, they're going to be grumpy, they're going to be frustrated, they're going to almost take that feeling into their home life. Then they're not really getting any let off from it. And it's almost like this catch-22 situation, because they're not getting any relief from it. So what you're almost saying is how you've worked in the past in your teams is that importance placed on this person seems to need some support. This person requires some help. Let's do that so that you erase that domino effect of it spilling over into their personal lives as well.
Like I said to you, I don't profess to have got it right all of the time, of course not. But if you've got that, the vision I always take is I want to make it a great place to work, and I want to deliver iconic service, whatever iconic service looks like in that particular industry. And I've been to lots of conferences where somebody will stand up and they'll say, we put the customer first and the customer is king and blah, blah, blah. In my part of any organisation, I've changed that with the team and said, let's put our colleagues first. Let's really try and help work with them, support them. And if we do that, they'll naturally take care of the clients or the customers. And your point was a really good one, because if you don't do that and someone comes to work and they're really not in a good place, as you said, they then go home and it's a 24-hour doom loop. They're all, and then what's the effect? Their partner, possibly their children, possibly their grandchildren, their friends, and all of a sudden the domino effect that you mentioned is actually the negative domino effect of, I can't find any peace whether I'm at work or I'm at home, so God, I I have not got all the answers, but that putting the person genuinely first is so important, I think.
So each episode, I like to share a particular topic around mental health, something that listeners perhaps could try doing at home. And today I've chosen creating work-life boundaries. Now, you said earlier on you're pretty good in regards to when you get home, your focus is being with your family, and that enables you to switch off from work. Have there been periods of time where you haven't been able to do that?
Yeah, for sure. We all work in a pressured environment, don't we? I think from some of the early learnings that I had in work taught me more and more about it's essential to let people be able to switch off from work. It's not a nice to do. It's essential for them to be able to do that. And so at the risk of boring you, I go back to that. When in the workplace, if you create a simple vision. So in my last corporate role, for example, there were circa 36,000 people in my team.
Wow.
Of course not reporting to me, all of them, but circa 36,000 people. And so if you truly want to get to everybody and make them all feel part of the team, you have to come up with something quite simple that, I don't say this disrespectfully, but the most junior person of that team needs to get the vision. And then when everybody gets the vision and everybody feels that they play a part in delivering the objectives, more and more people, I believe, do go home, feel valued at work, know that they're delivering a great job, and are able to switch off then and do. I'll give you another example. Is I had a senior team that worked for me, and I always tried to do this. And I used to say to them, look, if you've got young children, once a week, take them to school. And once a week, leave early and pick them up from school. And if you haven't got children, but you've got a cat that you love, or a horse that you love, or a dog that you love, or something, do that also. Because when people feel it's okay to do that, and they're not going to be chastised for leaving work early or coming in a bit later one morning, the value that they're getting with their family or dog or cat or horse or whatever it may be, enables them to come to work and feel that actually they are valued, they are being listened to, and that they can add value in the workplace. So I don't know if I'm directly answering your question, but it allows them, I think, to go home and by the way, of course, if people aren't delivering, then you know, me and everybody, we've had to have some tough conversations, of course. But even with that, I always say to myself and my team, let's question ourselves first. You know, why is that person not doing a great job? What have we done? Where have we failed in the training or the vision and all of that? But I think if you get that vision, I think if the most junior person understands the vision, and I think if people feel valued in that, you know, they can, it's all right to go home and do things you love or come in a bit late, then I think that you get paid back tenfold in the workplace. Don't know if that answered you.
In a roundabout way, you did, but you made a really good point there, especially from a woman's perspective. You know, that permission to go and do a school run and what have you.
Yeah.
I remember being a young mum, being in, you know, the business world, and that mum guilt of not being able to do those things would play such a huge part in how I was feeling. It would manifest itself in different ways.
Yeah.
You know, having that option to be able to just have those precious moments would have freed me from a lot of that.
So important. And I think if we all realise that you and I are at work and you know, we go to work and then we're at home, we're just people. You know, wherever we're at, we're just people. And so, you know, try and treat everyone with respect. doesn't mean you can avoid some difficult conversations and things, but overall, I think that approach has worked for me and my teams. I've had some brilliant teams. Yeah, you know.
So there are some ways that, especially in the world that we're living in now, where people do work from home, it can be quite difficult to get to that end of the day, especially if you've worked at home all day in the environment. How does someone switch off?
Yeah, another great question. I think that's very modern, as in the last, since COVID, really, it's really taken off, this working from home. I think there has to be boundaries. I think it's a leader's job to almost say to the team. I can give another example of that. Where my team and I used to say to people, do not send an email before 8 a.m. And do not send an email after 6 p.m. And that forced people not to be sending emails within our own teams, not to be into. Of course, if it was urgent, especially for me, then you of course you take messages at all times. But generally, if you put that boundary in, and sometimes the problem with that is people not really taking you seriously.
Yeah.
Like, does he really mean that? Or am I perceived to be doing more if I send something at 8 o'clock at night? So I think if you put those boundaries in, especially the working from home bit, and say don't waste your time, no one's going to read one before this time, and no one's going to read one after that time, that can sort of help.
So you're almost saying that from the leadership perspective, almost instilling those boundaries, because I was going to recommend there's boundaries that someone can put in place for themselves. For example, by a certain point of the day, do your list of jobs that you've got to do for tomorrow. As soon as that list is completed,
Stop.
You stop, work is done, change out of your clothes, go, wear something more comfortable, try and do an activity that stops you from thinking of work. Is it that you go for a walk with the dog, go to the gym, talk to a friend on the phone, read a book of your choice rather than something that may be related to work, and just making the right choices to switch your time and your focus from work into personal. And again, a lot of people these days get stuck. Work's finished, they get home from work, they sit on the sofa, they've got their phone in their hand, and before they know it, they're mindlessly scrolling. And they've just lost themselves because they're so tired from the end of the day. They're just mindlessly reading whatever nonsense is on social media, probably looking at the same stuff that they looked at yesterday.
Like in robot mode.
Almost like in a trance.
Yeah.
So again, if a person can put a time boundary to that of, right, okay, I'm going to get home, I'm going to sit on the sofa, I'm going to look at TikTok for 10, 15 minutes. And at that point, I'm then going to go for my walk, go to the gym, do this exercise, whatever it may be, where they stop themselves from, or where they have that divorce from work time to personal time.
But I think that what makes that so much easier is if the leader of that team or organisation or whatever it is actually says to people, look, so if the person you were describing was at home and their finish time was 5 p.m, if in that organisation the leader of that group of people said, look, we don't want to see an email after 5 p.m, they're almost giving permission. Because I think part of the problem is that some really hard-working, fantastic people are afraid to switch off. And I think the damage that can do at home is massive. So I think it's on the head of the leader of an organisation or the leader of a team to give them permission to do that.
Because it's almost like, as much as a person may be boundaried enough to put those boundaries in place, if the powers that be don't allow those boundaries or respect 100%. Those boundaries, they're going to be really difficult to maintain. And again, if that's the only person in the team that isn't looking at emails after 6 o'clock when everyone else is still firing them away, how are they going to look within their team?
You have to make that, I think, as a leader, you have to make that bold step to say to the team, it's all right. And of course, there will always, in all organisations, there'll be some exceptions to the rule. But generally, you will find that if you're saying to them, look, it's all right to knock off at this time, they're more inclined when there is a problem to jump in and be part of the team that resolves the problem.
Yeah.
So it's another conundrum, but I think it's on the leader to tell the person it's okay, and it's on the person who sometimes, by the way, the people just love it, don't they? And they have to be disciplined themselves.
Yeah.
And you actually, what you just said about put some casual clothing on, go out, go for it, is fantastic. I think that's exactly the approach, because then you've got a cut-off.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard and fast, isn't it?
Yeah. We like to end each podcast by asking our guests the same question. And the question is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
It's great. It's a great question. What advice would I give to my younger self? Go slower. I think when I got into retail, I was 100 miles an hour, and it was all going so well. But then you get caught up in a rushing for the next job, trying to do the next thing, I think go slower, enjoy today, not look after your team, because I always did that, but go slower, look after today, and the promotions will look after themselves.
Thank you for listening to The Silent Epidemic. A special thanks to our guest Mark for sharing his valuable insights and experiences. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to like, share, and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. This is The Silent Epidemic, and we'll see you next time.